We just spoke with Josh Tolan, founder and CEO of video interviewing platform SparkHire. They're a marketplace partner of ours. We talked about some awesome things, including entrepreneurship, the evolution of video interviewing, and the growth and expansion that SparkHire has recently experienced moving into the UK and Australia.
They're starting with BDR hires and then business development hires, customer success hires, which is really big. He basically just talked about how they're replicating what they've done in North America and Chicago and their headquarters, which is great. Sounds like they have like a really great foundation there. And then one of the most interesting things that I thought we talked about was around the fact that video interviewing isn't just saving on travel costs. They're also they're saving people time for everyone involved in the interview process. It's not just about cutting travel costs. Again, it's about saving time, and recruiters can easily just see every candidate interview in one place, which is, I think, huge.
Yeah. It's not just a cost-saving tool, it's a presentation tool as well.
Which I also love, the presentation buzzword. We hope you enjoy it, though. It's a good one. Yeah. You're listening to the Purple Squirrel podcast, where you'll learn how to make the unattainable attainable through the insights of staffing technology experts.
We're your hosts, Sarah Haberman
and Hannah DeBoule. Welcome back to another episode of the Purple Squirrel podcast. Today we are joined by Josh Tolan, the founder and CEO of SparkHire. SparkHire is an easy-to-use video interviewing platform with 5,000 plus customers conducting video interviews in over 100 countries. Organizations of all sizes are using SparkHire to make better hires faster than ever before. All SparkHire plans include unlimited one-way and recorded live video interviews. Hi, Josh. Very happy to have you, and welcome to the Purple Squirrel podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. So to kick things off, do you want to give us your sort of SparkHire elevator pitch and what it is about SparkHire that makes recruiting, the recruiting industry and the staffing industry care?
Yeah, so I think, before jumping into the pitch, I do think it's important to maybe clarify a misconception that many people have about video interviews. And you did point out the fact that there are two. But in many cases, really the question that I often receive is, how is this different from Skype or Zoom? And the biggest thing that I think, to point out is there are really two types of video interviews. So as you said, live and one way. Now, even though there are a number of differentiators, live video interviews are similar to other video conferencing solutions like Skype or Zoom in the sense that they're live. But one-way video interviews are really what has been taking off in the recruiting industry. And this is when you come up with a series of interview questions that a candidate records video responses to. And the candidates can do it on their own time. And they can be reviewed by a recruiter and hiring manager at their convenience as well. Now, our customer base is split between direct employers and staffing firms. And the quote unquote pitch for these segments is different, but on the staffing side of things, we really help firms get their candidates in front of clients quicker. So instead of submitting candidates to clients with just a resume and some notes about a conversation the recruiter had with the candidate, recruiting firms can share a link to a branded page which contains one or more candidates' video interviews, and then clients can review the interviews, provide feedback on who they want to move forward with from the shortlist. So, submitting the video interviews really accomplishes three main things. Number one, clients get a whole lot more insight into who the candidate actually is as a person versus just what's on paper. Number two, the candidates become a whole lot more tangible to the clients because clients can actually see them and hear them versus, again, just looking at a piece of paper and some notes. And then number three, clients can narrow the shortlist by, making quicker decisions by having access to these video interviews. So ultimately, what we're seeing is that recruiting firms are boosting their conversion rates, whether it's their submit to interview or submit to offer ratios, while also speeding up the placement cycle.
Yep. And what are some of the things that SparkHire sort of has on, in addition to just the basic functionality, to sort of sweeten the deal? I know you guys have, or the experience, I should say. I know you have the option to sort of add prep videos or thank you videos. Is there anything? I guess it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more
so you
about
could
that.
definitely customize the entire candidate experience. So you mentioned intro videos and outro videos, and those are basically what you can record or upload, and they play in the beginning or the end of the interview for the candidate. You can upload what we call video questions, and those are basically where you can have the recruiter asking the questions on video, Or some of our customers even have a hiring manager at the client company even record those videos just to really personalize and brand the experience and make it a little bit less one way. You can control all sorts of things, depending on what your goal is with the interview. So, really there's what we're seeing with staffing firms is there's really two main use cases. So either using it as a screening tool or using it as part of the presentation.
Mhm.
So as a screening tool, you might want to control things like how many times a candidate can re-record their answer or how long they can think about their answer before they start to record. But if you're using this as a presentation tool and as a better way to market candidates to clients, what a lot of customers are doing is just setting it to unlimited retries, unlimited time to think about it, just really so they can help, the candidate put their best foot forward. So there's a lot of things you can customize on, the candidate experience side. On the presentation side, when you're sending it over to clients, you have control of a number of settings as well. And we're continuing to build out the presentation capabilities, which we're really excited about some upcoming releases we have.
That's awesome.
I think I would be intimidated by the like unlimited retry option because I've never liked. I say as I'm sitting on video, I've never liked to have it viewed on video, and I would just keep going all day over and over again.
The only video interview I've ever done. I think there were like 3 tries, but that's also sort of like even more stressful than the other end.
Do you get to
Sure.
Do you get to
Yeah,
choose
it's
the last
your
one? You're
final
like,
one? Is it like your SAT scores where you get to choose the best one?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there you go. That's not quite as bad.
Is that
Yeah,
like
and
a
I
common
think
pushback or
I think
nerve?
it's something that everybody still has to get comfortable with, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, the majority of candidates that are doing a video interview have never done one before, but as we've been around longer and longer, we're starting to see a lot of repeat candidates for either the same or different companies. But I think the biggest thing, when we're talking about our staffing audience and our staffing customers is where a lot of those firms are able to add value for their candidates is how they position it. So when they position it as, this is a better way for us to present you to our clients and get you in front of our clients, and we're going to coach you up. And they really take a hands-on, like white glove approach to getting the video interview done. It really helps a candidate not only feel more comfortable, but also just put together a better video interview. So some firms even do it with the candidate while they have them on site. Like they might have a recruiter, sit in an office or sit in a conference room with the candidate, and they'll coach them up and they'll kind of tell them, okay, that was a great take, like we don't need to do this anymore, let's move on. So that types of hands-on approach is a nice way to add value, but also again, just a really good way to put together a really good video interview to send to the client.
Yeah, for sure. I also think it's a good, like, it's an excellent way to add value in terms of getting the candidate to come into the office, because I think, well, one of the things that I struggled with when I was a recruiter was like sometimes getting candidates to come in, and obviously that's on some levels sort of a red flag if they're not coming in to meet with you.
Sure.
But I think it's like a great way to be like, hey, come in, we'll possibly record this initial interview, we'll get you right over to the client.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Totally.
So Josh, if you started this company, I think basically right out of school,
Yep.
you ever actually had to do a video interview?
That's a good question. I have never actually had to sit on the candidate side because, as
Uh-huh.
you said, yeah, I started this right out of school, but at this point, I've been on video quite a bit.
I'm sure.
But
Maybe
yeah,
on the other side of things, right?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So speaking of starting this pretty much right out of school, was it an internship that you were doing at a demand generation agency?
Kind of. So yeah, I guess it could be considered like a summer internship, but really I was working year round even when I was at school.
Unsurprising.
Yeah, so it was and I can go into that, but it was a lead generation firm. We had about, I don't know, there were 4 or 5 people, and we started growing really quickly where the company scaled to, 100, 150 people
Wow.
in something like 12 to 18 months. So just like
Wow.
really crazy growth. And a big part of that was we started developing a call center.
Mhm.
And the issue that we were having when recruiting and growing the company was that, one, we were doing it very fast and we were doing it for, the same positions. It was really high volume, lots of resumes coming in. But the bigger issue was we had no HR department and we had no recruiter. So the business owners were the ones that were doing all the resume screens, all the phone interviews, all the in-person interviews. And I just kept hearing them complain about how much precious time they were wasting in the hiring process. And a lot of it was centered around, we're scheduling these 30-minute phone interviews, we're doing these calls, we're bringing a person into the office. The two owners are setting out an hour or 2 hours of their time. And 10 minutes into the in-person interview, they're like, this candidate's not going to work out here. And after that was scheduling the phone interview, doing the phone interview, doing the in-person interview. So just a lot of time was, going down the drain.
Right.
So that's really what, no pun intended, I guess here, sparked my idea for Spark Hire was I was driving from Chicago to San Diego after the summer back to school for my senior year. And had a lot of time to think being on the road for 30 plus hours. And it just kind of hit me. So I called the guys up and basically said, hey, would it be helpful if candidates submitted a video, just like even at first it was like a video resume, right? Like just a get to know you type of video. So at least you could feel like you got to know somebody before you're deciding to, invest an hour or 2 hours of your time to meet with them. And they loved the idea. And so, I ran with it and here we are.
There you go.
That's great. Do you think that, do you think this is a little bit of a pivot, but after sort of starting your own company and working on your own, starting at such a young age, that you could ever work for someone else again? It's a tough question, but
yeah, I would never say never. But there is something about, just waking up every single morning with something to chase and, that really just gets me going. It's not to say that, you can't be heavily invested in a company where you're an employee and that you're working for, but it's just, after being a founder, it's just different as a founder. And since I've been through it, I think it'd be really hard for me to not be working on something that I started. People ask me this all the time, and I really relate it back to I used to play baseball very, very competitively in high school and in college, and friends or just people I run into will ask me all the time, "Oh, you want to join our softball team, or we've got this men's league, that you can play in," and I always decline. Like I'll go play basketball, go play any other sport, but like anything baseball related. And I think the reason is really once you've done something at a high level, at a very competitive level, and something you're so passionate and invested about, it really is hard to ever do it again, but where the stakes aren't as high, if that makes sense.
Yep.
That's totally
So you
So
like extremes. I mean, you
exactly.
live in Chicago.
Yeah,
extreme weather.
fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, I've just always been a super competitive person. So I
Yeah.
always have had personal goals and something that I'm just chasing. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I could get passionate about something. So like I said, I never say never, but it would definitely take something really, really big to get me going.
Yeah,
Totally.
and I mean, based on that, it almost sounds like you'd probably be more likely to just start another company that you,
Yeah. Well, you see that
had
like
an
with
idea for, yeah.
with entrepreneurs, they kind of become serial entrepreneurs. They move from they start one company, they're like, I feel like I've done everything that I can do here. They move on to another one. I mean, we spoke to someone about that not too many weeks ago. But
Sure.
I did like Josh your men's league example because every guy in my life who has joined a men's league, it was like they had to like take a deep breath beforehand because they're like, this is it. I've graduated. I'm a little washed
This
up.
isn't real.
I have to join.
Right. Like I
now.
know I would go home every day like angry at how I played and just
Yeah.
how like less athletic I am and probably how injured I get. Like it just wouldn't be the same. And
Right.
so
Right.
And or
you know,
angry at like the people that you were playing with.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
real.
yeah,
Why
yeah,
are you
yeah.
taking this as seriously as I
Yeah.
am?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just a serious person in general, so it's just not a good combo for me.
That's fair. I grew up playing hockey, and my dad is in a men's league, which is fair. He's like almost 60 years old, and he's been playing one for years. And like once a month, he asks me to play with him, and I always say that I won't because I'm like, there was a time in my life where I could play with a bunch of 50 or 60-year-old dudes and know I was going to be better than all of them, and that time has passed. So now if I play, I'm playing in a men's league. And I'm not going to be as good as everyone. And I was like, I just like if that there was a short window for this to work, and it's way past. Sorry, Dad, it's not going to work.
So what
Yeah.
what do you feel like would be, I mean, I guess there's maybe no ceiling, maybe you don't see a ceiling, but for it, as far as the Spark Hire product goes, like, is there a ceiling, or are you just kind of like evolving and spinning off as you see fit? Like, how does that work, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely always trying to evolve, and we're always thinking about what the next iteration of the product will be. But for us, I personally, and again, I'm biased, but I personally believe we haven't even, reached anywhere near what adoption of video interviews could be worldwide. We really believe that this is just going to become something that every company does in the hiring process. And so for us right now, it's just how do we establish ourselves as the clear leader of the category and just becoming synonymous with the category and really just pushing it where we become, a staple in the recruiting process for companies all over the world. So we really feel like we're nowhere near the ceiling, of what we can do with just video interviewing alone.
Right. Well, I mean, it has evolved in the ways that you outlined earlier, right? Like the first I ever heard of video interviewing was when I was looking for internships in college. And it was your basic video interview. You just sat down, you had someone on the computer screen, you're having a conversation. And then I think the next iteration of that was those pre recorded questions that you talked about before, that the recruiter set up and then you have to answer. And the fact that now there's software that says, okay, this isn't necessarily going to be the version of this recording that you're going to put forth. You've got a couple different tries to do this. It has changed quite a bit. And looking at SparkHire's website, it seems like you've developed features and functionality that align with that change as well.
Totally. And I think the biggest thing for us as we look at our own roadmap and product development in general is we're really focused on building practical technology. So while there's a lot of innovation and things happening in the space for us, like, and you'll see this on our website, I'm sure, with a lot of the features you were looking at, all of it is built around trying to improve the experience. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, our customers are really trying to use video interviews for a pretty simple, straightforward use case to solve, pretty much the same problem over and over again. So for us, it's about how can we continue to make that experience better, with features and enhancements that support the goals of our customers versus, trying to build something that's like super innovative and way out there, that people aren't thinking about yet. Obviously, we're doing a lot of R&D on that type of stuff on the side as well, but for us, it's really about, our core focus is building just really, really practical software.
Definitely.
And obviously, so video interviewing is growing pretty rapidly. The need to most people, I think, is relatively obvious. But are there like any remaining uncertainties or common misconceptions that people still have around video interviewing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people still like I go to, tons of conferences and I'll speak with people face to face. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier, that the biggest thing that really I see from people is they don't realize that video interviews, there's something called a one-way video interview, the pre-recorded option that we've been talking about. People hear video interviews and they think Skype or Zoom or just video conferencing in general, and they think it's only for long distance candidates. When I can't meet with somebody face to face, this is what I do. And sure, like there are a lot of companies that's how they use video interviews, when they can't meet with somebody face to face. But what we try and tell people is that the majority of our customers, heavy majority of our customers, are using video interviews, even if the candidate is across the street. Because if you're using it as a screening tool, you want to make sure you're always investing, your time and effort into the best candidates. So it doesn't matter if the person's 5 minutes down the road or, hours and hours away. You want to make sure you have the necessary checks in your hiring process to ensure that you're investing your time wisely. And then if you're using it as a presentation tool, again, doesn't matter if the candidate lives right next to your office or the client's office. You want to get the candidate in front of the client. You want to save the client time. You want to put the candidate's best foot forward. And so I think that's, I would say, the biggest misconception still. It's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but that people think, video interviews are just for long distance candidates.
Yeah. So are you marketing it primarily as like a presentation tool? Or is that sort of the way that you're pivoting?
Yeah, for staffing, I mean, definitely there's a lot of staffing firms that are using it as part of the front end of their process before they're even presenting a candidate to a client, just to screen the candidate. But I would say the majority of staffing firms are using it later in the process. Like they've already vetted the candidate. They feel that, let's say, this short list of 5 people would be a good fit for their client, and now they want to send them over. Traditionally, they would send an email, with some bullet points and resumes and ask the client who they want to meet with for an on-site interview. But now they're, adding the video interview presentation as part of that. And it just gives that client a whole, better picture about who that person is. So that's definitely how we've been positioning it to staffing firms.
Yeah.
I think that video interviews kind of have, on a different level, it's the same idea as when you do an in-person interview. Like you bring someone in, you make sure that they are dressed for the occasion, they're presenting themselves in a positive way, they even down to the handshake. There's like, I feel like
Mhm.
when I was interviewing, there was so much buzz around like how firm the handshake is. But it's kind of the same thing with the video interview, right? Like, does this candidate know that they need to set up in a quiet area, that they need to look presentable, that the background, it can't be like a messy bed or like a dorm room floor or something
Mhm.
like that? There is also, I think, a level of, like you said, the presentation of just, yeah, sure, we know that you would do this if you came in person because there's no choice not to, but are you also making sure that you have all your bases covered and you're looking professional even when you're sitting in the comfort of your own home? Or
Yep.
like I remember doing video interviews in college, and I didn't want to do them in my apartment because I was so nervous that a roommate was going to forget that I was doing an interview and come home and bust down the door or be yelling about this or that. And there's just like that level of unpredictability that
Totally.
I went to our business school's office. They had like the nicest building on campus. I went over there and asked if I could use one of their rooms, and they had a hard wire, which was helpful. But I feel like just someone taking that extra precaution, extra level is also like, okay, this is a legitimate candidate,
Yep.
and we take them seriously, even if,
Totally.
whether they've come into the office or not, and we've seen that they're dressed nice and making eye contact,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Totally.
So, do you want to ask the next question?
Sure.
The
Yeah.
exciting things.
I was just gonna ask, what do you attribute SparkHire's rapid growth to?
A number of things. I think, what we've done a really good job at is being very methodical and strategic and thoughtful with how we run the business. So, I don't know if you guys know, but we've never raised, any venture capital funding. We had initial angel investors that helped get the company off the ground, with some development resources. But outside of that, we've been profitable for years, and all of our growth has been based on our own cash flow. So that's
Wow.
something we're really, really proud of. But what it requires is a lot of discipline and just being very, very strategic and, like I said, methodical about, how you do things and investing in right areas of the business. And so for us, when we talk to our customers, we always tell them, look, our goal is really to be the best company that you ever do business with. So we're going to be super hands-on with support and onboarding. We're always going to be talking with our customers. We're always going to be in tune with what they want and what they need on the product side of things. And just being so in tune and obsessed over all these different areas of the business is really what I feel like has fueled our growth. There's no magic bullet. I think it's just, a little humble brag, but we've just done a really good job of, executing.
Mm-hmm.
When did you decide that the UK and Australia expansion was the right thing to do?
Yeah,
That's a
so
pretty big move,
it
obviously.
definitely
Yeah.
is. I think with Australia, we had a really good presence in APAC. We had a good number of customers. We were getting a lot of organic signups. We had a reseller partnership that helped us expand pretty rapidly in the region. And as of the beginning of the year, actually, our Australian office is open. I don't know, Hannah, if we've officially talked about that, but we've seen some really nice early success out there, and like I said, we had always done well in the APAC region. So whether it was organically or through our partners, but we never felt like we were really hitting our full potential. And the challenge was we didn't have feet on the ground, and it wasn't a matter of like we need to go in person and see every single prospect or every single customer. The bigger challenge was the time zone, really, right? Like when you're talking about demoing prospective customers or onboarding new customers, the challenge was there's only so many times where the days overlap. And so that's where we really saw opportunity is, okay, if we can get people on this time zone with the traction we've already seen, we could really grow this thing. And so we really looked at these international offices as some nice growth levers for the business. And so the same thing with the UK. We've had some nice traction out there. We have a good customer base out there, but we feel like it could be much bigger if we were on that time zone. So UK office is going to open a little bit after our APAC one, but the wheels are already in motion, so we're definitely excited about it.
That's awesome. Which roles are you hiring for first? Have you decided on that yet? I guess like what does that depend on what's most important?
Yeah, so we've really taken the approach of just replicating our US model,
Mhm.
from the sales and CS org standpoint. So all of our product team and development is done here in our office, which is in the suburbs of Chicago. So these offices, I guess you could consider them like sales slash customer success offices. So we've been hiring business development reps, which are essentially people that are going out and prospecting and booking demos. We've got account executives that run the demos and close deals, and then customer success managers who are doing onboarding and are that relationship contact. Once a customer pays and becomes an active customer once they've been handed off from the account executive. So we've been building out those functions and those teams here in the U.S. And so that's basically what we did in Australia, and then same thing that we're going to do in the UK.
Perfect. So, Josh, there obviously has been a lot of buzz around video interviewing in the past few years. And actually, a quick personal anecdote for myself is that when I did my second internship in college, I got a call to interview with them. Actually, I rephrase that. I got a job after my first internship. And so I already knew the team that I was interviewing with, and they said, "Do you want to come up and interview for this role that we've got open?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I drove home from college over the weekend, which was like an 8-hour drive, which is actually nothing compared to like the 30-something hour drive that you were talking about earlier. But I drove all the way up there, and I think I was like, it had to be after classes on a Friday or something like that. So I was like in and out really, really quickly. I had like an absolute SHIT box car. Like she probably should not have taken on the highway. Like at one point prior to that, the wheel had actually, not the tire, but the entire wheel had come off of my car like earlier that year. So I wasn't super pleased about that, but went up, interviewed, went great, got back. And afterwards, when I was talking to my team, they had said something about video interviewing and how that would have been an option. And they're like, "Oh yeah, you totally could have video interviewed like that." Like we offer that to like all of our candidates, especially when they're like from out of town. And I mean, we already knew you too, so there's even a step up on that. And I was like, "You couldn't have told me that before I made like the 8-hour drive there and back." I mean, I brought a friend with me, and it was fine.
And you're like, "What's
but
video interviewing?"
but yeah, exactly. But I think
Yeah.
even that was like 6 years ago, I want to say. And
Yeah.
now I think my first instinct would have been, can I video interview instead of taking 16 hours out of my weekend to drive back and forth.
Sure.
And I think they would have also offered that up front really, really quickly. It's just definitely changed a lot in even such a short span of time. So obviously there's a lot of buzz around video. What do you think is the next frontier in interviewing? Is it something different?
Yeah, so first of all, that's a great story. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, like obviously this is our company and this is what we do, but when we're even hiring and using the technology ourselves, like, yeah, it's pretty amazing what we're able to accomplish now with all of the different tools and technologies that are now available to us. Like when we opened our Australian office, we did all of our interviews over video with people that were, all the way on the opposite side of the world.
Oh yeah.
And then for our first round of hires, I was able to actually meet them in Melbourne because I went down to go find office space and all of that. But for other, hires that we've brought on since that initial round, everything's been over video. And the first time we meet them is when they're showing up in our office for training and for their onboarding. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's really, really amazing what possibilities are now, open to us. And it's not just because of video interviewing. A lot of, different tools, technologies, services have really helped, companies like us expand. But, I mentioned it earlier. I really believe that, we're only in the beginning stages of companies adopting video interviews. We really feel like the market opportunity is huge. We want to become synonymous with the category and with, a stage of the recruitment process in general. And I really envision a day in which candidates are just referring to their video interview as their, quote unquote spark hire, right? Spark hire. And so, I'm very excited for what the future holds for us. But I think as far as interviewing in general, I mentioned this too, is a challenge we face here at Spark Hire is people thinking we're trying to replace the in-person interview. And our response is always that video interviews aren't a replacement for in-person interviews. They're meant to help organizations have higher quality in-person interviews and to get them faster. So looking forward, I really think that, when we're talking about the next frontier innovation around interviewing, I think it's really going to involve the experience leading up to in-person interviews. And that's what we're always thinking about over here is how can we make a better experience for everyone involved? How can we deliver a solution that, 10 out of 10 times produces better outcomes for those in-person interviews? So technology will certainly play a big part of it. So I'm interested to see what, developments that we come up with and what other companies in the space or outside the space come up with as well. But that's really where I feel like a lot of the innovation and focus is going to be is on all those steps leading up to the in-person interview.
And I think just like really, you're already doing this, but ultimately just playing into and like really leaning into an increasingly remote workforce will be huge, because that's, I don't think, going to change.
Yeah. I also really like the idea of like the product name becoming the verb.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Spark Hire, Google, Kleenex, Band-Aid. I like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
That is
I
right
want
there.
people to say, I did my Spark hire, and
Exactly.
that's what the vision is, and we really feel like there's going to be a day where that's what it is.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's great.
All right. Should we do our trivia now?
Yep. So we like to wrap every episode with a little bit of trivia. We have 3 questions for you. They're all related to staffing, recruiting, and hiring. The first one we took from our Global Recruitment Insights and Data Report, came out in 2020, for 2020, excuse me, in January. And I will read it to you. So
Okay.
according to Bullhorn's Global Recruitment Insights and Data Report, also known as GRID, the following percentage of respondents viewed globalization and the increased mobility of talent as an opportunity in 2020. A, 30%, B, 67%, C, 18%, or D, 80%.
I'm going to go D, 80%.
Close.
The 60s. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
67.
All right, I was a little too ambitious.
Yeah.
Yep.
We really ran the gamut with those numbers too. 18 to 80. All right, I'll read the second one. A recent office team survey showed that what percent of HR managers use or have used video interviewing in the hiring process? Is it A, 63%, B, 14%, C, 25%, or D, 55%?
It would be A, 63%.
You got it. And you know what? We pulled that from a blog from your website. So I'm super glad.
I was going to say, that survey sounds very familiar.
You know what? If you didn't get it correct, I wouldn't have come to that. I would have just moved on to the next one. All right, Hannah, you do the last one.
Last one. Employers can save up to what percent on the travel costs associated with hiring after adopting video interviewing? A, 60%, B, 67%, C, 55%, or D, 18%?
I'm going to go 67%.
You are
it.
correct.
I'm glad.
Coming out in the 60s.
I'm glad that we included that question and had this conversation, because when we were trying to think up trivia questions, I was specifically looking for travel cost related questions, thinking that is like the primary reason for a video interview. And that's not what we talked about today. It was also that it's kind of that presentation, that do we want to bring them in for an interview? It's more than just saying, oh, if she's 8 hours away and her car is janky, maybe we should.
It's really, really great for high volume. And saving your own time.
Exactly.
Not just your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, should she drive 5 hours?
I didn't tell them that my car was a shitbox.
Gosh.
Okay.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us for an episode. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right.
Cool.
Take care,
All right,
Josh.
guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode or are interested in listening to some more episodes of The Purple Squirrel, you can find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and make sure to subscribe there. Or if you're interested in learning more about Spark Hire, you can find them at bullhorn.com/marketplace.